perspective doesn't really cost you any money. It probably costs you some time and building those habits and your thought process. That's going to be an investment of time, but it's not going to affect your bottom line. But I think that it could do wonders for the overall morale of your business. All right, so here we are. It is 2023. 2022 was a crazy year for me. It felt as though we kind of got back on track as far as things getting a little bit easier in our industry. There were still a lot of difficulties I feel as though I struggled with, and they're personal, they're business, family related. I guess at the end of the day, I still kind of feel as though I'm not necessarily where I want to be. With that being said, as you guys can tell, we're putting a little bit more effort into this podcast. I think we owe it to you guys. We owe it to ourselves. It's been probably 5 years at this point, and I think it's time to really devote a little bit more energy to this, and make it more of a priority. And that's for myself, that's for you, that's for everyone involved with this. So what I think we're looking to do moving forward is we're going to have our normal Monday release of the podcast with Nick, myself, and a guest. And we're going to supplement that with an additional podcast. It most likely is going to be me hopping on here, for anywhere to 20 to 45 minutes just to kind of talk about what's going on, what's happening in my life, what's happening in my business, things that are on my mind, things that are on your guys' mind. If you have something that you want to speak to me about, or you have a question or you want to dig into further that we can't necessarily get into on the podcast, that I can't answer on my personal social pages, reach out to me, shoot me an email. And that's something that I can hop on here for, 20 to 45 minutes and dig into and hopefully help you guys out. So we'll figure out how to structure that moving forward. But for right now, we're going to throw this at the wall and kind of see what sticks there. Um, what we're also looking to do long term, hopefully this starts rolling out around springtime. As most of you probably have seen at this point, we started a little bit of a rebrand. That started with our logo, font, cleaning things up a bit, and that's going to work its way into how we, everything related to the podcast, right? And our goal is to create an expansive website where you guys don't need to get a hold of us, figure out how we operate, what the Modern Craftsman kind of entails through Instagram. We'd like that to be our hub, to be our web page. And we're going to kind of fill that with everything Modern Craftsman podcast related. And that'll be your landing spot there. And one of the things that we're going to implement is hopefully a weekly blog post that I'm going to be able to sit down and write. And I think that what I'll do is I think that blog post and me sitting down will kind of supplement each other and dovetail with each other. So if I have an idea, I'd like to get it down on paper and then hop on here and kind of expand upon that, right? So you can go to our website, in our email, whatever that may be, how this kind of reaches you, and read the blog post, and then I'll elaborate on that during this kind of one-on-one time. So that's the goal. I have a couple of blog posts in the bag. Not all of them are philosophical, deep, meaningful. My second one is just I sat down with somebody and spoke about site protection and not necessarily the nitty gritty of site protection and how that, the application of it, but just how we approach that on a job, how we sell that to customers, how we differentiate and distinguish what we're doing, and more of a conceptual approach to site protection. So it's not all going to be this deep, methodical thinking where we're really getting into your innate being and everything else. I think that it's gonna run the gamut, and whatever kind of I need that week, selfishly, this will be somewhat for me, and we'll dig into that. So my first blog is kind of related to the year end and what 2022 looked like and kind of leading into 23, and not necessarily specifics as much as just that feeling that I have between 2022 wrapping up and then jumping in and starting a new year. I take off the week between Christmas and New Year's. I also turn another year older on the 2nd of January. So all of that, the stimulation and the buildup and the excitement of the holidays and the kids and all of the pressure and shopping and making sure that you're ready for this party and these people got invited and cards and everything. It's a lot of work, and it leads up to a very exciting, love-filled holiday. And then I stop working. I sit around, I have a ton of idle time. I generally eat like crap and don't exercise the way that I'd like to. And then add, the aging with that, another year older. This year I turned 37, so that's on my mind, and that's typically, I'm not the type of person that's generally very excited about getting older, although I feel at this point in my life that I'm getting to the age where I can brag about still being able to do stuff at 37. Like, yeah, I can still get off the couch, or I can still run, or I'm still in relatively good shape. I didn't feel that way at 36. At 36, I felt like that was par for the course. That's what you should be doing. I feel like I'm getting to the point in my life where, I can be proud to still be doing things at 37. And whether or not that's true, at least that's what I'm telling myself. But I feel 37 is an older age for me. So this blog post is more about that and kind of how perspective and shifting your perspective is a powerful tool that, with, personally, or as it relates to a business, perspective doesn't really cost you any money. It probably costs you some time and building those habits and your thought process. That's going to be an investment of time, but it's not going to affect your bottom line. But I think that it could do wonders for the overall morale of your business, for yourself, and just how you approach life. And I am not speaking to this as an expert, because I feel I personally have terrible perspective of things. I look at it from my point of view. I don't necessarily take into account everyone else's point of view. That's probably for a lot of reasons, but I could do a better job of this. So that's kind of this is going to put me out there. It's going to require me to work at this. Hopefully, you can work at this as well. And it's going to create a little bit of accountability for myself. So I'll read a couple passages from the blog post that I think make sense to really get my exact wording and how I was feeling at that time, and not kind of summarize them. But a lot of it, I'm just going to kind of fly off the cuff. So the beginning of this blog post starts off as: the year comes to a close. I cannot help but reflect on all that has come to fruition in 2022. Unfortunately, my mind tends to gravitate towards what did not come to fruition instead. This is a common occurrence in my adult life, and with each passing year, I've grown more and more accustomed to these feelings, but have yet to quell the angst that typically accompanies these thoughts. Again, this is not the easiest time of year for me, and I'm 37 now. I I I haven't been dealing with this since I was, you know, an adolescent in elementary school, but I can recall in middle school, high school, as Christmas break comes to a close and it's a new year and getting back to school, the feelings of anxiety and kind of that high coming off of, you're so excited for this break and everything that's happening, and then that just your feet getting cut out from under you, and now it's like, get back to the grind, get back to work. You have a massive amount on your plate, and for me, it's never been a great feeling. So I know that a lot of people probably say, hey, it's a new year, January 1st, 2023. It's a brand new year. The ball just dropped. Why not make a change? Why not set higher goals for yourself, kind of elevate? And I would love to. And I think that I do, but I don't think that that's going to solve the problem and that create that perspective shift. I think that for me, that's more of a distraction, right? I can I can make a plan, what I want this year to look like and what my goals are. And I think that that's a good idea to work towards those goals. But again, that's not getting to the root of the problem. I need to look at what I can actually control. And I'd love to think that I can control everything in my life and what my goals are. And then I'm gonna write down all of my goals for 2023, and I'm fully in control of that. And I'm not, there's a lot of things that may happen. Whatever comes up in this year, whatever happens on a job, they don't necessarily go according to plan, and there's a lot of adaptation there. You're calling a lot of audibles. So I think this is where focusing on that mindset and learning to kind of control your perspective of things would be a more powerful tool and resource for me than creating this systemized plan, digging my heels in, and sticking to it. This also goes for what happened in 2022. You can sit there and you can inventory that and say, this happened. This is where I need to change. This is what I need to implement in 2023. That's great, and I do think that you should do that. You should have a pulse on your business and your life, your personal well-being. But a lot of that's in the past. We can't really do anything. So to kind of put your waders on and just go stew in the shit of 2022 doesn't make that much sense to me either. Remember, and kind of account for what went well and what didn't. You don't want to be making those same mistakes 2 and 3 times, and you want to build upon the successes of previous year. But relying on that to take you into 2023 isn't the best course of action for me. And again, it comes back to what I can control. And no matter what happens in my life, what happens in my business, I can't necessarily, although I'd love to, let's get that out there. My personality, I like control. That eases my anxiety and kind of mitigates how much anxiety I have. If I control everything in my life, a lot of anxiety is bred from situations and experiences where I don't feel in control. So if I could, that would be wonderful, but I can't. But there are certain things that I can control, right? And my perspective of what is happening in my life, what has happened in my life, and what is going to happen in 2023 really presents a ton of opportunity for growth for myself, for my business, for my family. I actually wrote this blog post when I was having these feelings on this break between Christmas and New Year's, where I was in a funk. My wife knew I was in a funk. My daughters knew that I was in a funk, and I couldn't pull myself out of it. So I had spoken to Doug, who is the owner of Motif Media, who runs and produces our podcast. You all know him. We had him on a few weeks ago, and he had kind of sparked this idea that I could sit down and have a conversation with you guys and girls and the listeners, just me and you one on one. And maybe if I start putting some thoughts, pen to paper over break, that something will come of it. So nothing else was working for me, and I was still in a funk. So I decided to sit down and kind of type out what I was feeling. And when I started to do that, I immediately felt better. I was acknowledging what I was going through, what I was feeling, and I felt that maybe um, I'm reflecting on this. Maybe my words that I put down can help somebody else. They're most likely going to help me because I'm really um, listening to how I'm feeling and engaging how I'm feeling, and then realizing if I can implement the change, and if I can't, that I need to again shift that perspective. So uh this this break for me again consists of a lot of family, which immediate family, extended family is great, but everything in moderation, right? I don't spend 12 hours a day with my kids every day. When you do, it's a lot. God bless teachers. God bless grandparents, stay at home moms, stay at home dads. I can't do it. I love my kids to death, but a lot of times they drive me nuts. Extended family, love my extended family, but there's a lot of bullshit that comes along with that. There's a lot of coordination. It's just a lot of work in general. So again, love them to death, but I could use a break from them. Typically, I don't have my structure, my routine, which kind of keeps me in place, keeps me grounded, also makes it hard for this week. The stomach bug ran through the house. Luckily, I kind of skirted around that, so I didn't have that to complain about. But that was kind of weighing on me, where I'm sitting there and it's like I'm watching everyone in my family get sick. And when is this going to hit me? Which it didn't. I lucked out, but kind of added to the uneasiness and feeling as if I was on edge. Um, Diet during the holidays is terrible. I eat like crap. I eat stuff that I don't want to eat, and that contributes to a poor physical health. And I know that that's short term. I'm it's not creating long-term sickness or illness, but I don't feel good physically. And in turn, I don't feel good mentally. So all of these meals, kind of the overindulgence, the decadence of the holidays doesn't it doesn't fare well for me. So I'm sitting there, and this is a an excerpt that I'm going to pull and read directly from the blog post, but to kind of paint a picture here, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm kind of observing my family. And we are at my in law's lake house, which is up in upstate New York. And I'm watching Selby, I'm watching Rachel, and I'm watching Tilly. And I'm kind of thinking in my head who I am, what makes me tick, and then looking at them. And this was what I saw. Here we go. As I sit here writing this, my oldest, Selby, is quietly reading a book at the kitchen counter, quite content in her literary consumption. My wife Rachel brews some tea, winding down her night, personifying her peaceful, anxiety deficient aura. My youngest, Tilly, paces the floor, anxiously organizing her board games, sounding off orders and rules that we all must scrupulously follow. All the while, I hear an unrelenting crumpling of paper, the running of a vacuum, and a cacophony of unintelligible words and sounds leaving my youngest, which is Tilly's, mouth. Witnessing all of this firsthand, but through a secondary lens, it's plain as day to see that Selby is Rachel and Tilly is me. Um, and where this kind of goes, and to touch on that perspective, is I noticed that Rachel and Selby can enjoy silence. Can they are content enough with their own selves and their minds and their lives to sit and read a book, to drink a cup of tea, to look out the window and just be themselves and be at peace. They're okay with being okay. And I would love to be there. And then I see Tilly, who just can't do that. She can't sit still. She has to be doing something. She has to be controlling what other people are doing. She has to be barking off orders. She has to play with something. She needs help with something. And it's crazy because watching her makes me anxious. And I'm that same way, right? So I look at this through this secondary lens and it drives me insane. And it's clear as day as to who she is and what's kind of making her tick. But then when I live this life and possess these traits on a daily basis, I don't see it. It's just me. It's what I know, and I don't see it as insanity. Um, so it was really easy, and it was this crazy moment where I was just sitting there observing everyone, and it was as if I was kind of in another room watching this all take place and unfold, and it was this moment of clarity for me that I really appreciated, and made me want to make a bunch of changes in myself and help Tilly because that can't be fun. I'd love for her just to sit down and read a book, relax. She's also sick, so that's probably not in the cards, but I don't want her to be turning 37 and kind of have that internal um, um, angst that she has, that kind of need to constantly go, the need for stimulation. And it's almost that you're cultivating these distractions to not have to be with yourself. Um, so I kind of had this realization that maybe maybe me not being able to enjoy the holidays as much as I like, and this downtime is a lack. It's not a lack of gratitude, right? But it's more of an inefficiency within my personality. It's a personality trait that I don't possess all of the workings to kind of conquer myself. And I To be forthright, I probably don't work on it enough. It doesn't, I create so many distractions that I don't have to think about this, right? But when I see it with my daughter and I want to make sure that she doesn't go down that same path and that she can kind of relax and be centered and feel grounded, that I want to implement things in my life that can help her do the same. Um, so I was sitting there and I looked up the definition of perspective, and I'm sure there's a million definitions, but it's defined as the interrelation in which a subject or its parts are mentally viewed. Um, and my perspective right now, and kind of in this situation of post holidays coming into the new year and just feeling, like inside I'm just ready to explode. My perspective is coming from points which aren't necessarily connecting to create the perspective that my physical and mental self needs. And saying just change that perspective is very easy, much easier said than done. But I need to learn to implement changes to kind of step outside of myself and look at this situation from a different point of view, right? What if I flip this all on its head and was okay with not riding my dirt bike, was okay with not working, was okay with not planning my financial future, worrying about what bills are paid, how much money's in the bank account, what I can do to the house. Um, if we're looking to move, what would need to be done to the house in order to move? There's just, what if I learned to stop all of that noise, right? And just be still. And the only place that I can be still right now typically is riding my dirt bike. Um, it's the only issue I see with that, right? Is it's not necessarily me working on those skills and creating those habits as much as I am forced to do so when I'm riding a dirt bike, excuse me, at high speed through trees. So that's the difference there, right? I think it's getting me to the same end point, but it's not a conscious effort of me doing so. So I don't have the answer for that yet. That's kind of what I'm looking at for 2023, where I'm not huge on these big resolutions, right? Where it's the ball just dropped. Let's implement these higher order magnitudes of change where it's going to change my life personally and my business, and it's going to be the best year yet. That's just not me. You look at the past 15 years of my business, a lot of that's organic growth. It's where my decisions and my path and my ethos within my business and my personal life have taken me, and that's kind of how I grow. It's not creating these massive goals that I'm going to dig my heels in and and work towards on a daily basis. I do have goals, but getting there isn't necessarily delineated in this straight line as a crow flies, and I'm not always circling back and gauging those steps in that growth. It's more of an integral change within my life, and as things evolve, I make little changes. I kind of keep in mind where I'd like to head, but I'm not steadfast in saying this is where I want to be, this is where I have to go, and 2023 is the year that's going to take me there. Excuse me. Um, so whatever works for you, you have to figure that out yourself. I haven't necessarily figured out what works for me, but this is the year that I'd like to do that. I have things in my life that are bothering me, things that I'm not content with, and I'd like to learn to not dwell on them, to not allow them to consume me, and and to be able to shift my focus elsewhere on healthier aspects of my life, things that deserve my attention rather than the negativity. And I know that I'm not the only one in this boat. You talk to anyone, it could be something as trivial as Instagram comments, where you have 100 wonderful comments of people really supporting what you're doing and standing behind you and promoting what you're about. And then you have two or three people who are just rude, inconsiderate, and want to bring you down. And you allow those two or three people to bring you down. And I'd like to shift to the 100 people that deserve my attention, that deserve my gratitude, and focus on them and forget about the other people. And, that's just a small example of a bigger picture that would be my life. But there's things in my life and things that potentially could happen in my life that I don't have control over. And that's where this anxiety is derived from and kind of where it lives. And I'd like to be able to change that. So I really want to step back from the control and needing the control and shifting my focus um, to what's within my reach and what I have the capacity as a person, as a business owner, a husband, and father to do. And I'd like to step away from looking to implement as many changes as possible and learn to be malleable enough to live and succeed with those changes in my life. So I'd like to just learn to be able to kind of shift who I am, how I view the world, how I perceive my business, and that's an internal change that I have to make. So the point of this blog post was obviously me, how I feel as though my life is going, where I want to be, and it's not as simple as just saying, hey, it's the new year, let's make a change. Um, Look for bigger jobs, look for more work, look to add to the team, look to land that job. That's not what it's about for me. Maybe this ship is on the right course. Maybe there's nothing wrong with the ship that I'm in. Maybe it's the driver. Maybe it's the pilot. Maybe that's where it needs to start. And I think that oftentimes myself, I can only speak for myself, but I also could say that I'm probably not the only person feeling this. But we feel as though when something's not the way that it is, or we're not at the point in our life that we wish to be or expect to be, right? We feel as though we're entitled to be at this point. We look to implement a million different changes to get there and to add people and take people out. And maybe you don't need to. Maybe everyone's right where they're supposed to be. Maybe you're right where you're supposed to be. And you need to change your outlook. You need to take, your desk is sitting in front of a window that looks east, and you need to change your desk to look west for a year and see what that looks like from a business perspective and from a personal perspective. So for 2023, if you guys would like to make large strides and changes within your business, and that's necessary and mandatory, obviously do so. But my suggestion and recommendation, and what I'm looking to do for this, is to learn to be okay with being okay and to work internally on changes of focus, viewpoints, perspective, and not necessarily messing with all of the inner workings of my system, of my world. More so look at me and what I can change there. That about covers it. I think I've said perspective enough that you guys never need to hear that word again. I probably should have looked up, let's see, I probably should have looked up another, like a synonym for perspective. But I didn't get to do that. Let's see. Perspective synonyms. Outlook, view, viewpoint. I think I used a few of them. Angle, that's a good one. I like angle. Frame of reference. I'll look up some more. So the next time that we have a podcast like this, I have some other words to use. But again, we're going to be looking to do this hopefully once a week, add this to the mix for you guys and girls, just to get a different outlook on the podcast and kind of this is another point of view, and to round out what we're doing as Modern Craftsman podcast. And I know I posted something recently about adding to the team. We have Doug on board, Nick's obviously on board. We just signed on with a new long-term sponsor that's going to give us the ability to really create the content that we want to do, podcast related and from a media perspective. So there's a lot coming there. And this is just to be able to give you guys a little bit more. It is very difficult to hop on with a guest and do this once a week. So with everyone involved, so I think I'd like to kind of give you my perspective on the industry, give you my perspective on life, and you guys will have some additional content. And again, I think springtime, we're really looking to push out this new website and get you even more of that. And that will kind of be the hub for Modern Craftsman. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for more of these podcasts with just me, yours truly. If you like it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know in a constructive way. What would be better? What could change to make it more palatable for you, more enjoyable for you, more constructive for you? And if you have suggestions as for what you want to dig into, it could be something specific, it could be technical, it could be more conceptual. Just let me know. And if it makes sense, we'll dig into it. We could also start creating options for you where you can kind of vote on them. So, again, I'm going to be throwing this at the wall, see what sticks, and kind of go from there. But in the meantime, just like with everything else, the podcast, if you do appreciate the effort, and I know that I appreciate the effort of our entire team and you listeners and partners, putting the time and energy into us and circling back week after week, it's really nice. So, if you appreciate what I'm doing, what Nick is doing, Anna, Doug, and Catherine, then hop online, give us a review. It helps us out a ton, and pass the word along, to a neighbor, to a friend, to somebody else in the trades, to your kid's teacher at school. It does really help us immensely. And that's all we can really ask of you guys, is just to continue to help us grow this and spread the word, and hopefully, have a greater impact on this industry. But that's it for me. I'm getting out of here. I hope you guys like it, and I'll see you next week.